Hello, welcome to episode 2 of the Imagination Factory. I'm Sarah.
I'm Keith. So this is episode 2, as Sarah mentioned. And so hopefully, if you've seen the first episode, you'll know that we started off with really just figuring out a story to do. And then from there, we started to progress the story. So we're going to continue to do so in this episode. But before we do that, we're going to introduce ourselves a little bit more. So each week you get a little bit more about us. So I'll go first if that's okay.
Of course.
Okay. So as I'd mentioned before, I'm a comic book creator. I'm an artist, a writer, teacher of comic books. But I actually started doing this as a professional when I was 13. So my parents, when I was 10 or 11 years old, bought an advertising agency,
Yeah.
and I lived in the same place. So I would go downstairs every morning before school, and I'd get to see like what they were working on. And this was pre uh, computers. So I actually learned the art of how to put a magazine together, the printing part of it, the all the different elements of the lettering and the imagery. And so I learned how I can apply that kind of um, the structure of that, and I've applied it to creating comic books and graphic novels and children's books. But fun fact, I actually illustrated one of the covers to the magazine when I was 13 years old. I drew this Hulk-like character laying out on the beach. And so that was my first professional work.
Oh, wow. That is a really fun fact that I did not know about you. So this is
Yeah. So I've been at this for a while.
yeah, I love it. Well, kind of similarly, like advertising is my background as well. But my very first job out of school in the industry was I worked for Family Channel and the Movie Network in Canada. And I was in their digital department. So I did their digital online content. And one of the biggest campaigns, the first thing I got to work on was the series finale of The Sopranos. How are we going to market that online? So it was a really cool opportunity. So I come from all different areas of writing, but my first place was doing digital content for television stations.
And so did you know how it was going to end?
We did. We did. We found
Oh.
out how it was going to end before it aired so that we could come up with a whole campaign about it. It was really interesting kind of being on that side of things. I went to school at what is now known as Toronto Metropolitan University for Radio and Television Arts. So film and TV was sort of always my thing, but the writing
Mhm.
aspect of it, which I've now sort of moved quite a bit into storytelling through books, stories, comic books, but TV was where I got my start.
That's cool. So you were part of a big historical moment
Mhm.
within the entertainment industry, because
Yeah,
that
it was a
ending was like one of the
cultural
most.
moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Wow,
kinda
that's
cool to be involved in.
yeah, for sure. Wow, okay, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't we begin with, as I mentioned before, where we were last week. So for those of you that were watching or listening for the first 30 minutes, you saw me developing this story idea that we chose from a bunch of different story
Mhm.
ideas, and I went through them to try to figure out what I thought would be a good idea visually, and then Sarah explained what she was thinking. We landed on what we're now going to call the door as the story, and it's like a kind of a horror story.
Mhm.
Excuse me. So we did continue for another 30 minutes after the episode. So if anybody wants to see that extra 30 minutes, we will make it available at some
Mhm.
point under our membership. But
Yep.
for now, let's look at the finished piece, and I'll zoom in a little bit here.
And
So
this is an
this is the
important time to
character.
remind you to make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss episodes in case you can't catch us live, that you'll be able to watch them after the fact and follow us on social media as well so that you stay up to date with new things that are coming out.
Yeah, exactly. So this is where we're at with the character that was created. So I'm going to use the inspiration of this character in today's episode to figure out some of the visuals of the character. But before we get to that, Sarah wrote down some characteristics of this character, so I'll let you share.
I did, yes. Okay. So let's see here. Okay. So this is what I have envisioned based on what you just saw for how we're going to round out this character. So we're intentionally not going to give this character a name. And I think that's actually really important because that adds to that horror element that we never strictly name this person. They just are the person. So that's sort of my feeling that they're an adult, late 20s, early 30s. So at that kind of out on their own discovery portion of their life in a bit of a lost space. So this character's first truly solitary living situation. They're not just new to the apartment, they're new to being alone with themselves. So already we have somebody who's first out in the world, uncomfortable, something's happened. We're never going to describe it, but we know about our character because it's important to know things about our character we never mention that they had some kind of recent loss, right? So, a version of their life, something was going on. They got kicked out of somewhere. They had something happen that forced them into this uncomfortable space. Could be a breakup, could be a death. We're not sure what it is, but we need to know that they are not feeling very whole right now. They're feeling lost inside. Something ended without explanation or closure. So, a core emotional wound. They believe answers exist somewhere, but not where they are now. So, this is somebody who's looking. They know there's answers out there, but they cannot find them. And this is really important. And this is also why the door is going to drive them nuts because they're looking for something to have meaning. Coping style is avoidance, rationalization, and obsession. And obsession is the important part here because that is what's going to drive the story. So, they try to solve discomfort instead of sitting with it. They're looking to try and make something better as opposed to just being okay with not being okay. Um, the relationship to the space that they're in, they want control over the environment. And we're going to make that clear through visuals, as you've already seen that we were talking about last time. Rearranging the furniture is an attempt to regain their agency, right? So they're trying to take over the space, and the room is supposed to be a reset. The door ruins that fantasy, right? So that whole feeling of starting again, getting my life together, getting over whatever it was, the door just keeps getting in the way of that happening. So let me scroll down a little bit.
This is
Okay.
really good. I mean, it's you're painting a really good picture so far of the character. I'm imagining it in my head as you're
Yeah.
going
Thank
on.
you. I think that was the thing is because it seems so simple, right? You're looking and it's this one character in a room, but the more complex we can make this character, the more the horror really hits, right? Because now there's this trueness to it. So the personality traits, they're quietly anxious, they're highly observant, which again is really important. They're not dramatic, they're very internal, right? So they're not somebody who's just going to start freaking out. They're going to sit there and feel it, but we're not going to see them having huge moves. They talk out loud, which gives us a bit of a chance to have a bit of dialogue coming out when there's not another person there. And they fixate. They fixate on things, which is why the door becomes such an obsession. So, why the door affects them specifically, someone who's content or grounded could ignore the door. The character needs it to mean something. So, this is important again to everything we've learned about this character. That is a huge defining fact. And that need is their trap. That need for it to mean something is what keeps them unable to just move on with their life. Other people might just be like, there's a door, it doesn't open, whatever. I put something in front of it, I'm done. They can't. They cannot move on because of the obsession that they have. Okay. And the last kind of chunk is what the door represents. So the door represents the belief that a hidden answer will justify their loss, pain, dissatisfaction, and that somewhere just out of reach is proof that life should have gone differently. It is the physical manifestation of their unresolved grief and the lie that closure exists if you push hard enough. The door does nothing. It promises nothing, yet it consumes everything because the character projects their longing onto it. Once the door is opened, the character story ends, not because the door was special, but because the need for meaning has finally devoured the person who needed it.
That's a lot. There's a lot there. That's great. So even from that, you could almost, I mean, we're just skipping ahead. You can
Mhm.
almost take all that and break it down into like an outline form and to create like a
Exactly.
bit of
Exactly.
script.
the beats of how they move through that feeling. And I think that's the big thing I was trying to figure out was we don't really learn much about this character, but we know a lot about them, and that's going to dictate how you perceive them and how you create them visually is with that knowledge. So again, I know from a writer's point of view, we're tempted to put it all into words, right? To put lots of words on the screen to answer all the questions, but it's much more powerful if a visual can do that and the words are
Mhm.
just there to support where needed. But that's where the work comes in ahead of time. You have to know what's going into the character so that you can properly create a visual that says it without all the words all over the screen.
Yeah, exactly. Like I approach it saying it's supplemental. So
Exactly.
the visuals, you as the reader could probably, if the storyteller, the visual storyteller, the artist is doing their job properly, you would be able to kind of get the story without any kind of words, right? You'd be able to
Exactly.
figure out that there's some kind of person that's in this place, and from the visual actions and emotion and where they are located, figure out what's going on someone. And then the words are going to supplement, they're going to exclamate, or they're going to give more context that the person isn't actually being able to show them visually, right? And
Exactly.
that's a really good, that's when it's a good marriage of the two forms,
Hmm.
when you can balance that really well and not feel like you're being taken out of the story.
Exactly. And letting the visual do what it does, right? Don't explain it if a visual can answer it for you.
Yeah, exactly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. If you could actually send me through the chat the,
I can.
because as we mentioned before, this is
Hmm.
all like spontaneous. It's not like she sends me this ahead of time so I can think about what this person is going to be like. This is all happening right in front of you. I've had no, we really don't talk about what the story is going to be really,
No.
other than if when we're recording. So either when you can see it or if we keep on recording after for the members.
Hmm.
Otherwise, we only talk about like the nuts and bolts stuff. So I'm sharing my screen here. And so before I get into what I'm going to be doing, I just want to make sure that if anybody is following along and if they want to, let's say, draw along with us,
Hmm.
take a piece of paper, pencil. It doesn't have to be in a sketchbook. It could be like typing paper, and feel free and practice along. Pencil, pen, doesn't really matter. I'm using, as I mentioned before, Cintiq. It's a pressure sensitive tablet, and I'm using my uh, stylus pen here. And when I'm doing something, I'm going to be changing how I would normally do this a little bit, just because I want you to be able to see it. But I may actually decide to change that up as well. So what I'm talking about is right now I'm using like a would be considered a brush pen to draw. And all I'm doing with this brush pen is getting some of the basic shapes of what this character. And I want you to be able to see it. So I'm doing this in a way so that you can see it. But if you're using a pencil, it may be much lighter than this. And if I were doing this normally, the way I would be using like a pencil like brush to do a much lighter line so that you may not be able to see it, but I can see what's happening here. Anyway, so I'm just very loosely going through figuring out shapes of this character and doing like a frontward bust using the reference of the illustration I did last time. I'm looking at it. It's right next to the illustration, or the illustration's right next to what I'm doing here. So as you can see that. And so I just want to get a sense of this character, the shapes, right? So I'm thinking the chin, I like the chin being somewhat sharp. So if you see
Hmm.
here, the head's almost like a teardrop shape, like
Yeah.
an upside down teardrop. You've got narrower features because of that. The
I
hair
like
is
the face being
very,
a bit harsher. I like that it's not a soft, like rounded face, but it feels pointed, which I think works to the character. This isn't a soft, rounded person. This is a sharp person who has a lot of points on them, right? Like they are not a warm, fuzzy, gentle person.
yeah. And that's something that I didn't really think about, right? But maybe it's
Mhm.
intuitive. a bit. We're making somebody that is for sure somewhat damaged.
Mhm.
So we don't necessarily the audience make if I were to do something rounder, just as an example here, the rounder may give it a much softer, like the
Mhm.
person is, maybe a little bit happier or whatever. And
Yep.
to Sarah's point, I'm not going in that direction. I'm making this character a little bit more severe. I mean,
Mhm.
the hair is a key point here. It's like the bowl cut with a like a mullety type of situation going on, right?
Yep,
And that makes it feel a little bit more severe.
for sure.
And then the way that the clothing drapes too, it's not tight fitting, it's very loose fitting.
Mhm.
I'm not sure what
Yeah, this
that's
doesn't
about.
feel like someone who cares that much about their appearance. They're at a point in their life where they're just getting through the days, right? These clothes are on the floor, I picked them up. My haircut's good enough, I'll do it myself. Like, I feel like that speaks to the character of this person that they've kind of given up. This is like their last attempt at a restart of their life, and it goes very poorly. I also
No.
just wanted to mention, because I know with writers, a lot of times we get really excited and want to skip right into the plot, the story, what's going to happen. But this stage is so important because if you don't really define who the character is, their wants, their needs, what's stopping them from getting what they want, your story will be a little flat, right? It might have a great
Mhm.
plot, it might move forward, but the actual heart of the story just won't be there. So, as much as it's tempting to go straight into the plot of it, this is really, you have to know the character and then put them into the story. And this is a really, really important step.
Yeah, and if I were to depending on the scope of the story, depending on the amount of time I had, I would experiment maybe a bit more with the character's look, and that's totally fine if you're not sure what you're creating your own story, you're not sure exactly what your character is gonna look like. It's fine to play around different shapes and different,
Hmm.
uh, feelings, the emotional states the character might be in. With this and it's kind of funny, with you, I've it seems like I've been able to get the characters very
Hmm.
quickly with
Yes.
Cushing County especially.
Yes.
Those characters came along really quickly. I don't think I did a lot of doodling around to figure out what they were. Just from your descriptions, I got a really good sense of what I thought the characters would be, and so same with
Yeah. They
this
were
for some
instantly
reason.
correct. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and that's just it. It's just sometimes characters will come to you, and it's funny how
Hmm.
that happens where you just imagine them in your mind's eye, and you're like, "Okay,
Yeah.
this is what this character feels like for this story." And then sometimes it takes a little bit more searching, and that's fine too. Like, there's no right or wrong with this. It's just whatever feels good about this character, and obviously having a really good understanding of the character's description from the writer will fill
Hmm.
that in. Uh,
And I think certain
the
genres are easier too, right? Like certain things tend to have really standout characters, and others you really have to work hard because the plot is the thing and the character is kind of secondary. You really have to figure that character out in order to put them in the plot. Whereas these types of stories are very character driven, right? And so it's becoming the stories coming out of the characters. They're telling us the story. As wishy washy as that sounds, that's kind of how it's working. Is it was seeing Keith's initial drawing that allowed me to round out the character, and now looking at the character, they're starting to tell us their story. So it's you kinda have to let the process happen to make it work.
it's a very organic back and forth. It's one
Mhm.
feeds off of the other, that's the amazing part of this. This character did not exist prior to last episode, and
Yeah.
now all of a sudden this character exists and already has like certain kinds of personality that
Mhm.
that is telling me even almost the way I'm drawing this character, making it very, as Sarah said, it's very angular. The lines are sharp. So
Mhm.
because of that, everything I'm thinking about or just intuiting into the intuition of it for me. Uh, feels it's telling me the kind of lines I'm laying down, which are
Yeah.
just like this. Whereas if I was doing something where it had to feel light and fluffy, I may be drawing like this. I'm
Mhm.
slashing. I'm doing lots of slash marks as I'm drawing, and you're the vessel of this. Like the creators are the vessel of Sarah's point of view. Just kind of tells you what it is. So you're just the
Mhm.
vessel of creating
100%.
this whatever they are they want to be, and so um that's the magical part. You just have to get out of your own way and let it happen, not think about it too much, and then all of a
Yes.
sudden, that's when the magic happens a bit.
Yeah, the more you're willing to lean into that, the better your storytelling will get. The more, like he said, you can get out of your own way and stop putting severe rules in front of you because, we've all been taught different things and this is how you do it and formula, this and that, which are all important. Structure is important. All those things are important, but so is putting that aside, being a storyteller, being a creative, and then applying the rules afterwards to make sure it checks all the boxes. But this is an important stage to just really see where it goes and then form it from there.
Yeah, another way of saying that too is just don't be so hard on yourself.
Yeah,
Let it flow out of you. That's why the doodling part of it is really important because
huge.
when you're letting the lines just tell you what they are, you're not concerned with anything other than just enjoying the process of doodling. And then
Mhm,
all of a sudden, something magical comes from that doodle, and you can use that to as a reference to create more of the character. That that's how you'll start to become a bit more structured at that point, but just be really loose with this. Just let the lines flow. Don't worry so much about perfection. It's the imperfections really that's where a lot of the magic happens. If you try to make it too rigid in your thinking about how everything's supposed to be, then
mhm.
what happens is it frustrates you and that you're more likely to end up stopping if you uh, just let it go in any direction it goes in, and then from there um, you can start to become a little bit more structured, right? But for now, like right now, all I'm doing is just playing around with the character. I'm not really showing. There's not a lot of emotion, although I mean
Mhm.
that's not true. There is a lot of emotion actually. I'm not
Yeah.
thinking so much about any kind of particular emotional state the character's in, but the character kind of feels very broken.
Mhm.
Like there's something like a brokenness to this character as I'm drawing them.
Well, yeah, and likewise, when you're talking about the doodling and just getting it all down, what I read out was this polished off of a brainstorm, right? That is not where I started. That's where I ended. I had all kinds of stuff down. I was typing paragraphs, I was typing descriptors, and I edited it stuff down because certain things stood out as being appropriate. Other things did not once I started
Right.
putting other things in. So what you saw was kind of the polished version of that where I went through and edited it down to what needed to be there and only what needed to be there, but that's not where I started. So likewise with doodling, as a writer, don't think that whatever you put down is final, right? Just put it all down, walk away, go back, put more down, edit what was there, give yourself time to think about it, and then whittle it down to the polished result that you want. But that's not the first thing you do. The first thing you put down is not going to be what ends up going through. It's just where you start.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I actually call it doodling as well. Like when you're
Yeah.
writing, it's like just whatever comes to mind. That's a form
And
of
that's exactly
doodling.
what it was. I was just typing words that, looking at your image and just like, what am I feeling? What am I thinking? Who is this person? And then the story started to unfold in terms of the character description and why they were there and why this was such a big deal. Because again, part of it too is figuring out the door as a character, right? It's not just a door, it's part of this character's story. And that was important to figure out the relationship between the two of them as if it were two people.
Right. The door is going to be a character.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And just going through how I'm doing this, a little the structural part of this. I'm going where I started with like the very frontal view and then more of like a three quarter and then an up shot and now a down shot. I'm just trying to get a real sense of the shape of this
Hmm.
character in all different directions because it just helps me start to connect the dots. The next step, which once we're in a couple of minutes, we're going to end this episode, but I'll keep on drawing. I'm going to start to go into some of the emotional state of the character. So, for those of you who continue watching after this first half, you'll get to see some emoting from the character and some maybe some gestural aspects of it. But that's what I'd be thinking about next once I start to get past some of these very basic angles of what this character looks like.
Perfect. And then next episode, we're going to start to get more into story beats and what will actually flow through the story. So today's episode's all that character development. Who is this character? What do they look like? How do they feel? All that kind of stuff. And then once we know who that character is, we're going to start figuring out how we move them through the story to keep it interesting but tight and really to speak to all the things we've talked about. How are we getting there in 4 pages? So that will be next episode, next podcast.
Yeah, and for those of you who are wondering when we're gonna go live, I believe we're gonna go live Tuesday, March
Starting
3rd.
in Correct. We're going to start going live beginning of March. So a few more are pre-recorded just to kind of find everybody, let them find us, and then when we start going live, we'll be able to hear from you, ask questions, take suggestions, all that kind of stuff. So again, like I said at the beginning, make sure to subscribe and follow along with us on social so that once you can catch up until we go live, and then when we do, you'll be able to be an active participant, and we're really excited for that to happen.
Yeah. But in the meantime, you're welcome to ask us questions on the socials, on
Absolutely.
Instagram, Imagine
Yep.
the Imagine Factory, as well as YouTube. You can always leave a comment under the episode if you have a question or a comment you wanna contribute to the
Absolutely.
story.
And everything's linked. So if you find us on one platform, you can find us on another. So on that note, we will sign off from this first half of the episode. And thank you for watching, and we will catch you next time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.